All right. Hello. Good morning. Good afternoon, almost. I'm Karen Dube. A lot of you have had the displeasure of calling me when you've had total coliform detect. I say displeasure because I know you guys are not happy when you get the call from the lab and then you have to call me. But I always hope to be available to answer your questions and help you through whatever regulatory guidance needs to be done. Jack Patch, he is a training specialist who deals with water and wastewater, and he primarily works with private public water suppliers. He's a circuit rider, and he deals with public water supplies also, but more of the municipal type systems. So these two gentlemen are available through Mass Rural Water Association to provide assistance to public water suppliers. So please take advantage of any assistance they might be able to give you if you have questions about something they might be able to help you with. Regarding the revised total coliform rule, we're hoping to just provide these ongoing training sessions to help you become more familiar with the regulations. We're going to be reviewing the monitoring frequency for small systems, how to prepare for this revised total coliform rule. We do have level 1 assessment forms already on our MassDEP website, as well as the level 2 form. We're going to go over what the level 1 assessments are under the revised total coliform rule and a brief overview of the level 2 assessments. All public water systems, regardless of population, must monitor for total coliform bacteria. Sampling plans. You'll continue to use your current total coliform sampling plans that you have. But one thing you should always keep in mind, especially for the small municipal systems that may be here, if your population has increased or decreased since your last sanitary survey, that's information that you would be reporting in your annual statistical reports, but it also directly affects your current total coliform and your upcoming revised total coliform rule regulations. There are charts within the regulations that describe your population and what your minimum sampling should be, and as Kevin pointed out, it's important to note that's the minimum. Based on configuration of the distribution system, MassDEP may require additional locations be sampled within your system in order to protect public health. You want to be evaluating your distribution system now to determine if your current sample locations accurately reflect your system. If you're a small municipal system and you've had an expansion in one area of your town and previously did not have a total coliform sample location, that should be added so that you're representing your entire distribution system and not leaving out sections of it. Coordinate with your MassDEP regional office before you make any changes to your sampling plan, but just contact your regional office and say, you know, we've had a big growth over in this area, we want to update our plan, or mom and pop's grocery store changed ownership, they don't want us to sample there anymore. Revisions to your sampling plan can be made now, they can be made in the future, but the communication is key. We started the rollout of the early implementation quite a while ago, and again, anything that you can find now through this tool of the assessment and say, I found a problem and I'm fixing it, it prevents you from problems down the road. When they say performing the mock level 1, pretend you have an MCL violation right now and go in and try to identify deficiencies. Makes your system stronger. The revised total coliform rule, level 1 assessment forms. And again, the purpose is to find sanitary defects at the public water supply. Part of the existing total coliform rule is folks are used to, I have an MCL, I'll take my repeats, I'll provide public notice. I didn't see any problem. Must not be one, couldn't find it. I'll submit my public notice and then I'll be done. Well, the revised total coliform, find and fix. The emphasis is to find, or at least look for, and hopefully find a potential problem. Are there any sanitary defects that could provide a physical pathway of entry for microbial contamination, or sanitary defects that indicate a failure of protective barriers against microbial contamination? Did you go out, when you had the total coliform detect, did you go out and see if somebody ran into your wellhead with a lawnmower? The landscaping guys came by and they whacked it. Is your cap still there? Is there a crack in the casing? It's not just, well, gee, we've never had a problem before. There must be a lab error, right? It's always the lab's fault. Well, it could really be something within the system. It could be a lab error. There have been a few instances where labs have written supporting documentation where there was a problem. Specifically, I know an autoclave malfunctioned. They had a bunch of invalid samples. So, I mean, a sample bottle gets broken, you have to go out and resample. But really, the first place to look is at your public water supply and look at the physical properties within your system and see if there's a problem there. Level 1 triggers and assessments. So the trigger for the revised total coliform rule is what would have been your trigger for your MCL violation. You don't have the MCL anymore, now you have the assessment for total coliform. And again, as Kevin pointed out, your acute violation still remains primarily the same. And I'm going to talk about the acutes and jump off the RTCR for a minute. If you have a total coliform positive and E. coli positive distribution system sample, and your repeats, any of your repeats have total coliform only, that's an acute violation. If you have total coliform in your initial sample but no E. coli, and your repeat sample has E. coli, that's an acute. So when you combine, when you have that E. coli and there's also total coliform in the repeat sampling, it's the acute violations. Those require notification to the department within 24 hours of an E. coli detect. The violation doesn't occur until the repeat sampling is conducted. If you have more detects, then you trigger the acute. But even the initial E. coli detect must be reported to the state. But for the level 1 triggers, if you collect fewer than 40 samples per month and more than one sample is total coliform positive, that triggers your level 1 assessment. If you fail to take every required repeat sample, there are treatment technique triggers. And the assessments are to be conducted by the public water supplier, and it's a basic examination of the source water treatment distribution system and all of your relevant operation practices. Level 1 assessment components. I believe this is the version you'll find on our MassDEP website for the level 1 assessment forms. They ask all the information we always want to know. What's your public water supply ID number, the name, the towns, what type of system are you? There are general categories. Maybe you decide that things have changed in the operations of the business and what used to be a relatively clean sink is now your mop sink. Can you take a good sample from there? Yeah, you can. And if you take it and you have it analyzed, it counts, whether it's absent or positive, it's a valid sample. Again, the sample site evaluation, but is that the best tap that you want to use? Is that really where you want to go? Do you want to go to your mop sink and struggle to make sure you're getting a good sample? Or do you want to go to another sink that the use is not conductive to contamination of your sampling? It's sampling protocol. Are you following all of the sample protocols for conducting total coliform samples? Occurrences at relevant facilities prior to the collection of TC samples. If this is a location that you've had problems in the past, has cross-connection survey been done? Is there something else going on? Is it hooked up to the heating system? Are things not hooked up the way they should be? Has a plumber come in? Maybe you're the public water supplier and you lease it. You lease to someone else and they're in there and they had someone come in and do some plumbing that you didn't even know about. Have there been changes to the system that you might not have been aware of? And communication between public water suppliers, their staff, any leasees or people who are occupying the building. Communication, again, is key so that if there's going to be work done, that you know what the work is and you know who's going to be handling it, and if they're going to be properly disinfecting your system when they're done. You don't want to have somebody come in and do a repair to a pump and not disinfect your source after they're through. But it's happened, because if they don't know that you're a registered public water supply, they may not be going to the highest level of protection to ensure your water supply system. They may be following the plumbing protocols, but they may not realize the impacts that they could have to a public water supply in creating violations without proper disinfection. Your operational changes, your distribution system, your storage tanks, your treatment processes, your sources, whether it's a well, spring, or surface water supply. Have you recently added a source or taken a source out of service? Have you had a change in your flow patterns because of a removal or addition of sources or other components, tanks, things like that, or treatment processes that may change how the water's flowing through your system? Make sure you're being objective in all the different categories so you don't overlook something that could be critical that you think, well, our sampling is always fine. Well, did your guy remove the aerator? You know, the simple things like that. So it can be a review of your sampling protocol that you may find, well, you know, the regular guy wasn't here, the new guy that came in, he forgot to take the aerator off. Maybe that was a potential cause. The remedy for that is provide training. Make sure you have refreshing training classes or attend training classes. Depending on your size of your system, you go out and attend a training session. If you were a larger system, you had a couple employees, you might review with everybody the sampling protocols. And there's a section to say, did I find a problem? Well, if you found a problem, then you have to define how you're going to fix it and the timeline you're going to fix it. And the sooner you get these things corrected, the easier it is for everybody. And compliance history, because time slips away. And then there's a section for drinking water for us to write any comments as well. Small town Mass. You have a small community water system that uses groundwater. They remove iron and manganese with a green sand filtration, and they disinfect with sodium hypochlorite. They serve 4951 persons. They take 6 routine samples per month, and they go out and they take some samples in order to give themselves sufficient time to take repeats in the event of a positive coliform sample. If you were to look, this is a Monday. We do encourage systems to sample as early in the week as possible so that you're not getting the call on Friday that you have the hit. Now you've got to take repeats, you've got to find somebody who's open, you have to have someone available to receive the results of the repeat call over the weekend. But in this case, they take samples on a Monday, and they have total coliform positive at their Main Street location. They take repeat samples, the original site, the upstream and the downstream. Those are also total coliform positive. Under the current rule, you would have triggered an MCL, but now you're going to trigger the assessment. Now you're still collecting more repeats to see if it is still prevalent, or is it getting worse, is it getting better? Maybe you flushed out the system. But after they've determined that you've triggered a level 1 assessment, you don't have to continue the repeat sampling within 24 hours. Once you trigger the level 1, you have an opportunity to take corrective action. But you'll want to work with the person in your region that's responsible for the revised total coliform, that you're taking the repeats in a timely fashion, because we've got to get used to all of this too. So we're going to be fumbling along with you. You are able to take your repeats, and it's best if possible, take your repeats on the same day that you're notified. Then you don't get into the they forgot, or you're over the time. And the sooner you get the repeats going, the sooner you find out how much of a problem do you have. There were 8 routine samples that were collected. There were several detects, and it was definitely a trigger of the level 1 assessment. Was there an E. coli MCL violation? No. Was an assessment triggered? Definitely. The level 1 was triggered. Example of the corrective action. They're going to be reviewing what happened. Have any of the following occurred at the facility prior to the collection? Did you have a loss of pressure due to a large water main break? Did your tank levels drop to near empty? You may have had old water entering the distribution system from the tank. If you've had low turnover and then you have a sudden drawdown, you're not pulling the best water that you'd like out of your tanks. Corrective action would be the distribution system was flushed, especially near the tank, to improve the turnover. The tank was taken offline clean, shock chlorinated in accordance with state guidelines and the AWWA standards before putting it back in service. Chlorine will be checked at sample locations at least 2 times per month. So if you have, most of you folks that have treatment that have chlorine, you're out checking your chlorine residuals. You know when you start to see a difference in your residuals that you need to adjust your chlorine, especially after detection. You're going to want to monitor your residuals even more closely. You should be checking the sample location at least 2 times per month. Ensure that it's maintaining the residuals that you expect to see at that location. Consider moving a repeat sample location nearer to the tank. As Kevin had mentioned, you may find in reviewing your sampling plans that based on the flow of water, you think maybe there's a better spot to be sampling your repeat, especially at intersections or particular road crossings. And you're like, am I really getting the water representative of the tank in the upstream and downstream? If you need to change your total coliform sampling plan because you think you want to better represent your system, if you have changes in pipe diameters in one section of street going on to another street, know what your system components are and the best way to sample and get accurate information. Explore developing an SOP for water main break and tank operation. If your regular guy's on vacation, does his step-in know where everything is and how you'd want things to be handled? So if you have SOPs designed for a lot of different scenarios of how things should be handled, then when the time comes and you're a little anxious because you have high anxiety because DEP wants to know what's going on and what are you going to do to fix it, you already have your plan. Well, if this happens, this is what we're going to do to fix it. What happens when you have your assessment trigger? Well, notify MassDEP as soon as possible, but no later than 5 days after the collection date of the sample that triggered the assessment. Submit completed assessment forms to DEP no later than 30 days after triggering the assessment. In this case, the trigger date was the original DETECT sample on February 8th. You must describe any sanitary defects that have been detected and corrected and actions completed or that you propose to complete and a timeline of when you're going to take those actions. So if you need to have your tank cleaned and you need to bring in specialists to do that and they can't come next week, when are they going to come out? When are you scheduling it? And if it's not going to be completed by the time the form's submitted, you need to give us a schedule of when you're going to be doing it. Then we have to go in and look at and approve those schedules. If we think, well, you want to have a year and a half to have your tank cleaned, I don't think so. You can get it done a little sooner than that. Maybe not next week, but not a year and a half from now. What did Small Town do? They notified the DEP on February 10th of the trigger. They went in and completed the assessment form. They noted the sanitary defects and the corrective action taken, and they sent the form to the DEP. The DEP received the form on the 17th, and they found the assessment and the corrective action adequate. So, what reporting requirements need to be complied with? So what do you have to report to us under the new rule? That you triggered the assessment. And what other violations did Small Town Mass incur at the end of the compliance period? And do they have to issue a public notice? And what reporting requirements does Small Town need to comply with? That assessment. And we're going to say it over and over again. You have to report. You have to submit the assessment forms. And they have to notify us within 5 days of triggering it. You have to submit the results no later than the 10th day of the following month. Reports must be submitted to the MassDEP in the mail. As far as monitoring reports can be submitted to the DEP through eDEP with the lab. Our review of that will not, I believe, impact your second hit. But it's going to be tricky to start keeping track of all of this. Yeah, I'm going to be making some changes to my my cheat sheet spreadsheets, as a lot of you folks know I have, trying to keep track of who called me, who has hits, who has to do whatever they have to do, who's got repeats pending. Did you do your public notice? Did you send me everything? I'm looking forward to it too. We're all going to have a lot of fun. So the more communication you can provide to me, I hope to be able to provide rapid communication back to you as we roll it out. And just submit the forms within 30 days. I know that's a tough thing to remember. A lot of systems here that have had MCLs in the past, you do your due diligence, you take care of the public water supply, you get things disinfected and your wells treated, disinfection time throughout your system, you take your repeats after action or absent, you do your public notices, but don't forget to mail it to me. Because there's going to be a lot of these, we're going to have to be making sure that we receive the reports in a timely fashion, or then we have to issue a violation for failing to get the report. And that's a really awful thing to have to send out a violation for when you did it, but I just didn't get it. And we do have our Southeast Regional Office. You can receive hand deliveries. If you're really concerned about making sure did we get it or not, then send it by certified mail. Proof that it was submitted to the DEP. What other violations incur at the end of the compliance period? So if you follow everything, if you do what you're supposed to, you can keep yourself out of incurring violations. You don't have that automatic trigger of an MCL violation anymore once the revised rule comes in. So if you do everything that you're supposed to do, you don't pile on violations just because you forgot to send something in or you forgot to call. Call us, send us the stuff in the mail. The sooner the better, so there's no question about it. I wouldn't recommend waiting 5 days because you might forget. I mean, I would recommend you trigger it, give me a call. So we asked the same questions a lot, didn't we? In small town Mass, were they required to issue a PN? Nope, not if there's no violation. If they didn't submit the assessment form, then you're going to have to post your public notice that you didn't do an assessment form on time. People don't want to see that. They're just going to be confused. What do you mean you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing? Community public water suppliers need to include information in their CCR about total coliform detections and assessments conducted. So your current CCR, you list any detections that you have, you list violations that you have. Under the new rule, you'll still list the detections that you have, and you're also going to list if an assessment was conducted or required. Revised total coliform level 2 assessments. And the level 2 assessment is triggered if you have an E. coli MCL violation, or if you've had 2 level 1s in a rolling 12-month period. And the assessments would be conducted by MassDEP or a party approved by MassDEP, especially for some of the smaller systems where you may have your VSS license, but maintaining this public water supply, you do it because you have to, and you're registered, and we say you have to. But that's not what you signed up for when you opened your store, or you may not have known about it. But now you're responsible for this public water supply system. And the level 2 assessment is a longer form. It's more detailed. We've added some things that our folks have seen in their sanitary surveys, and we thought it'd be best to just put some of those on the level 2 assessment forms. That, it's operational and maintenance issues. Has there been a firefighting event or a flushing operation or a sheared hydrant? As a water department, do you have someone in your fire department that routinely calls you if they have a large event to let you know that they're using your water? You may have a change in flow in your distribution system due to a fire issue. And do you have a system of logging those things down? I had a system one time call me and said, anything unusual in your system lately? Nope. And then I started asking questions. Well, have there been any fires? And they're like, oh yeah, you know, we had one a couple weeks ago. A week or two goes by, that's not fresh in your mind. Now you have a total coliform defect. So those events can come back down the line. And so if you make a note of them when they occur, and then you say, oh, well, that explains a lot of what I'm seeing right now in my distribution system. Again, visible indicators of unsanitary conditions. While the forms may seem to be very cumbersome, and we come up with the questions because there have been things found there. They're typical places where bacteriological contamination can be contributing factors. Contacts for the revised total coliform rule. My email is right there for you. I look forward to hearing from folks and providing assistance as you need it.